The current position of Jungkook within the global music industry is not only a reflection of his individual achievements, but also an indicator of broader shifts in how pop success is measured and recognized. In particular, his performance on US-based charts, which have historically been the dominant benchmark for international recognition, has demonstrated that he is capable of reaching levels typically reserved for long-established American artists. To understand why even some of America's biggest stars have been caught off guard by Jungkook's dominance, it is necessary to analyze the mechanics of chart systems, the scale of digital consumption, and the role of cultural exports in redefining what constitutes mainstream pop. The Billboard Hot 100 remains one of the most important references in global pop. For decades, it has acted as a gatekeeper of what the US and, by extension, much of the world considers relevant in music. Historically, international acts outside of the English-speaking world struggled to penetrate this chart, even if they had immense popularity in their own regions. Jungkook's solo releases, however, broke through these structural challenges. His singles achieved top positions not only on the Hot 100, but also in associated metrics such as streaming charts, radio impressions, and digital sales. These accomplishments revealed an industry trend. The US market, once considered resistant to non-Western solo acts, has adapted in response to shifts in audience behavior. One important aspect to highlight is the speed at which Jungkook established himself as a dominant solo figure in the US. Although he had already been known as a member of BTS, the transition to solo success is not guaranteed for any idol, regardless of group popularity. Many group members from different industries attempt solo projects that never quite achieve the same global reach. Jungkook's rapid ascent to Billboard chart leadership showed that the infrastructure built by BTS could be leveraged, but it also highlighted his unique appeal as a solo performer. He became not only a continuation of his group's legacy, but also an individual brand that could hold its own in a competitive market dominated by US artists. Streaming patterns played a crucial role in this shift. Platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube now act as primary indicators of global audience engagement. When Jungkook released his tracks, they immediately registered tens of millions of streams within the first day, often ranking among or above the biggest American names in contemporary pop. This is not just a matter of fan loyalty. It is also tied to broader changes in how global audiences consume music. Younger listeners, especially Gen Z, often prioritize playlists, recommendations, and viral platforms like TikTok. Jungkook's songs became viral audio trends, leading to exponential exposure that traditional marketing could not replicate. As a result, his dominance on global streaming was reflected back onto US charts, which increasingly factor in international digital consumption. Radio has historically been a challenge for non-American artists, but even here, Jungkook made progress. American radio stations are known for prioritizing domestic acts, yet his tracks still managed to break through in certain regions, gaining airplay that further validated his presence within mainstream US music cycles. This was surprising for many industry insiders who had assumed that a Korean language or even partially English language artist would not be consistently welcomed by US radio programmers. The fact that Jungkook's presence reached American households through traditional FM channels underscored a structural transformation in audience demand. Another critical dimension is sales. Despite the decline in physical and digital sales in recent years, Jungkook's music demonstrated unusual resilience in these categories. his fan base mobilized for physical albums, digital singles, and deluxe versions, ensuring strong first-week numbers. In the US, where digital sales had almost disappeared as a meaningful metric, Jungkook's tracks reached the top of digital download charts. This achievement surprised American artists who had long shifted away from prioritizing downloads, instead focusing primarily on streaming. Jungkook's success in this area reminded the industry that an international fan base can still drive traditional sales, creating an advantage over US artists who rely exclusively on domestic performance. From a historical perspective, Jungkook's position can be compared to earlier waves of international artists who broke into the US market, such as the British invasion bands of the 1960s or Latin artists during the late 1990s and early 2000s. However, unlike those eras, Jungkook's breakthrough occurred in an age when music circulation is instantaneous and borderless. This context allows him to maintain consistent chart success across multiple regions simultaneously. While a British or Latin star of earlier decades might have needed months to establish themselves in the US, Jungkook's releases trend globally within hours. This temporal acceleration is one of the main reasons his presence feels more disruptive to the US market. It condenses the rise of international influence into a much shorter time frame. The element of surprise for American stars stems from the fact that Jungkook is not merely a guest in the US pop industry, but rather a competitor who is reshaping the industry's definition of success. Traditionally, American artists dominated global pop culture through large-scale marketing budgets, global touring networks, and control over English-language distribution channels. Jungkook's success demonstrates that an artist outside this infrastructure can still achieve dominance. This is particularly notable because he does not rely on traditional Hollywood systems. Yet his name is consistently positioned alongside the most commercially successful pop stars in the US. Moreover, the consistency of Jungkook's performance is an important factor. One hit song can be dismissed as an anomaly, but multiple consecutive releases achieving top placements prove that his popularity is not a one-time event. For US stars who have had to fight for relevance in a fragmented digital landscape, watching an international act sustain momentum is both impressive and disruptive. It sets a precedent that challenges the long-standing assumption that American acts are the default leaders of pop music. Industry professionals in the US are also paying attention to the secondary effects of Jungkook's dominance. Collaborations with American producers, songwriters, and featured artists have positioned him as both a cultural bridge and a commercial asset. American stars who work with him gain access to his international audience, but at the same time, they acknowledge that he brings equal if not greater visibility to the collaboration. This inversion of the traditional dynamic, where international artists benefited primarily from US exposure, highlights how power has shifted within the industry. The psychological impact on American artists cannot be ignored either. For decades, US musicians held the assumption that the Billboard charts were their territory, a place where outsiders might appear temporarily but never dominate. Jungkook's ability to compete at the same level, without the same geographical or cultural advantages, challenges that mindset. The shock among American stars does not necessarily come from jealousy or rivalry, but from the realization that the global music industry no longer revolves around them exclusively. In conclusion, Jungkook's global chart performance has become the first major reason why he now rules pop. and why America's biggest stars have been caught off guard. His ability to penetrate the US market on its own terms through Billboard, streaming, radio, and sales demonstrates a fundamental realignment in the global music hierarchy. While American artists once held a monopoly over international recognition, Jungkook's rise shows that the era of unilateral dominance is over. Instead, success is now shaped by a combination of global digital ecosystems, international fan bases, and cultural fluidity. In this environment, Jungkook has established himself as both a pioneer and a competitor whose presence forces the US music industry to reconsider its assumptions about leadership in pop. One of the defining features of Jungkook's success is not only his ability to achieve chart dominance, but also his capacity to navigate cultural boundaries with a fluency that few artists, American or otherwise, can match. In today's music industry, versatility is often measured by an artist's ability to adapt to different genres, languages, and cultural expectations without losing coherence in their identity. Jungkook has demonstrated this adaptability in ways that have redefined how global audiences perceive pop, and, importantly, how US stars measure their own reach. His cultural versatility, manifested through his multilingual performances, collaborations across genres, and his fluid presence in both Eastern and Western markets, has placed him in a position that American pop stars did not fully anticipate. At the heart of this versatility is language. Historically, American pop has maintained dominance partly because English has been treated as the global language of mainstream music. Non-English acts have occasionally broken through, but such cases were often framed as exceptions rather than rules. Jungkook's approach complicates this narrative. While he has released songs in English, he has also maintained Korean-language tracks that perform equally well on international charts. This duality shows that success in the US does not require complete assimilation into English-language pop. Instead, Jungkook has proven that global audiences are willing to embrace multilingual content, especially when delivered through high-quality production and relatable themes. For American stars who once considered English dominance a strategic advantage, this realization is striking. It suggests that linguistic monopoly is no longer a guaranteed tool for cultural influence. The way Jungkook moves between cultural spaces can also be seen in his genre experimentation. While he has been rooted in the pop and K-pop framework, his solo discography reflects elements of R&B, EDM, hip-hop, and even acoustic balladry. For US stars, genre flexibility has long been a measure of relevance, especially in an era when audiences consume playlists rather than albums. Jungkook has adopted this same strategy but executed it on a transnational scale. A single project may include a track with Western-style production alongside another that incorporates distinctly Korean stylistic elements. This versatility allows him to speak to multiple cultural audiences simultaneously, without alienating either. The effect is a broadening of his fan base that extends beyond demographic boundaries, further solidifying his global dominance. Collaboration serves as another critical element in Jungkook's cultural fluidity. Unlike artists who focus exclusively on domestic partnerships, Jungkook strategically engages with US producers, songwriters, and performers, creating works that naturally integrate into the American soundscape while retaining his distinct identity. For example, his collaborations with well-known American artists are not simply guest features, but equal partnerships, in which his presence enhances the commercial and cultural value of the project. This dynamic reverses the traditional power imbalance where international acts benefited primarily from US cosigns. Instead, US Artists now see collaborations with Jungkook as opportunities to tap into his massive global following, indicating a fundamental shift in influence. Beyond the music itself, Jungkook's cultural versatility extends into visual representation and branding. In the global pop economy, image is as important as sound. Jungkook's partnerships with fashion brands, such as Calvin Klein, demonstrate his ability to operate not only as a musician, but as a transnational cultural figure. His visuals blend Western high fashion with Korean aesthetics, creating an image that appeals across markets. American stars, who once dominated fashion endorsements, are now sharing space with him, and in many cases, they find themselves overshadowed in terms of global engagement. The shock factor here lies in the realization that an artist outside of the US entertainment complex can redefine global brand alignment. Social media amplifies this cultural reach. Platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter X thrive on cross-cultural exchange, and Jungkook has become a central figure in these digital ecosystems. His content circulates in multiple languages, often trending in countries that traditionally consumed American pop as their main reference. American stars are accustomed to their own dominance in digital virality, but Jungkook's ability to simultaneously trend in Seoul, Los Angeles, Sao Paulo, and Paris demonstrates a reach that few of them can replicate. This cultural ubiquity destabilizes the assumption that US stars alone dictate global trends. Another layer of versatility lies in performance style. In American pop, live performance has historically been a cornerstone of cultural legitimacy. Artists are judged not only by chart success, but also by their ability to captivate in arenas, award shows, and televised specials. Jungkook has excelled in this dimension, blending the precision and choreography associated with K-pop with the vocal presence and improvisational energy expected in Western stages. His ability to deliver in both structured and spontaneous formats allows him to satisfy diverse cultural expectations. When he performs on American platforms, he adapts seamlessly without losing the signature polish associated with K-pop. This dual competency is something that American stars rarely have to develop, and it places Jungkook in a category of his own.